The blackout hit Willow Creek like a sledgehammer, not with a flicker or a warning, but with a sudden, gut-wrenching plunge into darkness. It was the middle of the afternoon, the school gym buzzing with the annual science fair, kids proudly displaying solar-powered gadgets and baking soda volcanoes when the lights died. Fire alarms wailed, backup systems stuttered, and at Willow Creek General, ICU monitors went black for 6 agonizing seconds. Traffic lights froze, gas pumps locked up, and screams echoed from the elementary school as teachers scrambled to guide kids through pitch-black halls. My phone lit up with frantic calls, but I didn't need to answer. I knew exactly what had happened. My wind turbine, the one keeping this town's emergency grid alive, had been sabotaged, not by a storm or a prankster, but by Susan, the HOA president, who'd taken a chainsaw to its blades because she thought it ruined her view. 2 days earlier, I'd noticed something off. My weather sensors weren't picking up the turbine's usual spin data from its perch on Maple Ridge. I checked the diagnostics from my basement server and saw a string of disconnects, not a mechanical glitch, but a deliberate cut. I assumed a snapped cable or maybe a bird strike. But when I hiked up the hill behind my workshop, the sight stopped me cold. The turbine's massive 3-blade rotor, which supplied nearly half the town's emergency power, lay in the grass like a butchered beast, its metal twisted and scarred with fresh, jagged saw marks. A note, tucked in a plastic sleeve and zip-tied to the turbine's base, confirmed the culprit. One line, in prim cursive, "Your windmill violates HOA Aesthetic Code 6.2. Remove all parts within 48 hours or face a $600 daily fine." Susan Caldwell, HOA president. I stood there, disbelief burning into rage. Who would chainsaw a town's lifeline over a sightline? I live on the edge of Willow Creek, where the HOA's reach is shaky at best. My turbine, built 13 years ago under a FEMA resilience grant, predates most of the cul-de-sacs around here. I designed it with engineers, got it certified, and have it inspected yearly. It's legal, untouchable by HOA rules, and wired to keep the fire station, school, and hospital running when the main grid fails. Susan knew this, or should have. She'd been gunning for my property for years, finding my bluebird houses for clashing with neighborhood tones, and calling my vegetable garden a weed hazard. But this was war. Worse, her timing was catastrophic. I'd been prepping with the town's emergency team for a storm season audit, and the turbine was our fail-safe. The next day, a freak thunderstorm rolled in, lightning, blown transformers, total grid failure. Susan's vanity project had just plunged Willow Creek into chaos. I raced to the town substation, where first responders were scrambling. The school was evacuating kids by flashlight. Gas stations had cars stranded mid-fill. At the hospital, flickering emergency lights barely held because the turbine's backup feed was gone. The mayor and fire chief stood in the rain, staring at a fried fuse panel, looking like they'd been punched. When I showed them Susan's note, they thought I was joking. Then they saw the sawed-off blades in my photos. By morning, the town was a powder keg. Reporters swarmed, and a Channel 7 crew filmed me by the turbine's wreckage. Parents and kids from the science fair showed up with signs: "Wine saves lives," and HOA, "Heartless, overreaching arrogance." Susan, unfazed, posted on the HOA's site, calling the turbine a visual blight and claiming it was unsafe and outdated, despite its annual certifications and the fact that the nearest house was a quarter-mile away. Her lies were as bold as her chainsaw. I didn't just sit there. I dug into my records, pulling the FEMA contract that marked the turbine as a protected emergency asset. Tampering with it wasn't just vandalism, it violated federal disaster protocols. Then FEMA called. My turbine's sudden blackout had pinged their grid monitors, and Agent Harper from Homeland Security's infrastructure unit was on the line. Apparently, hospital-tied backup systems are federal priorities during emergencies. Susan hadn't just cut blades. She'd crippled critical infrastructure. That night, a FEMA inspector, Ramirez, showed up at my door, exhausted but all business. I handed over permits, logs, and drone footage of the turbine spinning flawlessly days before. Then we watched my security feed. It was grainy but damning. Susan, in a straw hat and pearls, directing a guy with a chainsaw. She pointed. He cut. The blades crashed in under 4 minutes. Ramirez's jaw tightened. "This is bad," he said. "Really bad." By dawn, Susan faced a storm worse than the one that killed the grid. FEMA, the town's legal team, and a state energy consultant launched a joint probe. Residents weren't idle either. Teens spray-painted justice for Maple Ridge on sidewalks. A GoFundMe for turbine repairs hit $60,000. Someone built a Minecraft turbine that went viral with 80,000 views. I didn't want fame, I wanted the grid back before the next storm. This wasn't about ego. It was about the diabetic kid on an insulin pump, the teacher zooming her class, the firefighter needing radio backup. Susan had declared war on reason, and I was ready to bury her with evidence. The town was on edge the next day. Grocery stores limped on partial power, traffic lights blinked chaotically, and parents kept kids inside, fearing another outage. At Pete's Diner, people stopped me to vent or thank me. Susan's act wasn't just arrogant, it was calculated. She decided her aesthetic whims trumped public safety. The mayor summoned me to town hall, where Susan's latest stunt was causing a riot. She presented a PowerPoint titled, "Preserving Willow Creek's Charm," complete with photoshopped images of turbine explosions and fake stats claiming the blades caused skyline stress. She called my turbine rusted and pulsing with EMFs, despite its sleek, silent design. I waited as she unveiled a final slide, a mock-up of a serenity garden to replace the turbine. Then I stood, plugged in my drive, and let the truth speak. My slides showed FEMA permits, grid schematics, and the security footage of Susan orchestrating the sabotage. The crowd gasped as the chainsaw roared on screen. Susan tried to claim it was out of context and the turbine was abandoned. The town clerk shut her down, citing her own emails complaining about the eyesore windmill months earlier. The fire chief stood next, voice steady but furious. "We lost radio contact for 15 minutes. A house fire could have killed someone." The room went silent. Susan had no response. The mayor suspended all HOA infrastructure authority and called for a bylaw overhaul. Outside, teens live-streamed the drama, dubbing it Bladegate. My quote, "You can't cut safety for vanity," went viral. Susan didn't quit. She emailed HOA members, claiming she was framed by green extremists and attaching a doctored zoning map that redrew boundaries to exclude the turbine. Her loyalists, gnome-hating, grass-measuring types accused me of running a power cartel. But the town was done. Parents petitioned to oust Susan. The fire brigade pledged repair labor. The robotics club offered to 3D print blade parts. The turbine had become a symbol of defiance against unchecked ego. That night, I stood on Maple Ridge, staring at the turbine's battered pole under the stars. It looked like a wounded sentinel, but it still stood. FEMA confirmed they'd arrived to assess damages and prep for prosecution. Susan's beautification was now a potential felony. FEMA arrived at dawn. Agents Torres and Klein, all business. They photographed the wreckage, noting the precise chainsaw cuts. My sensor logs pinpointed the sabotage. 3:47 a.m., blade stopped. 3:52, torque failure. Torres called it textbook sabotage. As they left, support poured in. A machinist offered custom parts. A retired welder brought his rig. The GoFundMe hit $75,000. A nurse sent a note, "Your turbine kept my patient's ventilator on last year." Susan, meanwhile, was imploding. She called secret HOA meetings, but her vice president quit, and a board member apologized to me. That weekend, we held a rebuild event. Neighbors brought tools, food, and kids who played turbine tag. Susan drove up, flanked by a nervous lawyer, and glared from the road. No one invited her. A welder yelled, "Smell that? It's karma." Laughter broke the tension, and she left. The turbine rose, stronger with encrypted monitors and a steel barrier. Susan cease and desist, accusing me of defamation, was laughed off by the town's lawyers, who reminded her of her FEMA probe. The viral video, now dubbed Chainsaw Susan, hit 2 million views. At the municipal hearing, the chamber was packed. I presented permits, footage, and logs. The fire chief and a nurse detailed the blackouts near disasters. An HOA whistleblower revealed Susan's 6-month plot, including an email about replacing the turbine with a Caldwell Serenity Park. Her contractor admitted she'd paid cash to make the blades fall clean. The council stripped Susan's title, banned her from HOA roles for a decade, and suspended the HOA's utility oversight. Applause rippled through the room. Susan vanished, rumored to be hiding out of state. FEMA escalated her case to the state attorney general for infrastructure interference. The turbine, now Willow Creek Auxiliary Station 1, got a plaque. Power isn't loud, but its loss is deafening. The HOA reformed under new leaders, passing a safety-first rule. I took a new role as infrastructure liaison, ensuring no one could touch our grid again. I bought Susan's neighbor's lot and installed a creaky, decorative windmill, her permanent reminder. Months later, she returned, looking broken. "I didn't know what it did," she whispered. "I thought I was helping." I nodded, not for her, but for closure. She drove off, a shadow of her former self. That night, the turbine's hum felt like the town's heartbeat. Susan had cut its blades, but she'd awakened a community. And in Willow Creek, we'd never be left in the dark again.